It is time for MMA Live Before Lock here, an early afternoon as the fights start here in 1 hour from the Apex there in Las Vegas. Of course, it'll be over there on ESPN Plus. Main card starts 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're here to break this one down for you. Of course, be sure to start giving us those thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to Awesemo right here on YouTube, you gotta do that. We got ton of great programming for you each and every day. I got a doubleheader today. I'll be on NASCAR here later on this afternoon. Myself and Phil will break down today's NASCAR race. Of course, start lining up those questions right now in chat. Of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. We'll talk a little bit about Monkey Knife Fight later on in the show. But of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, I know it's a little early morning for you, working a little late last night here, but I was actually surprised. I was like, okay, I'll text Pete about 11:15, make sure he's up. You text me like 10 a.m. Like, all right, he's up and going.
Yeah, man. I had to make sure I was able to go get my coffee, and a little preparation for the slate here. But man, it was a long day yesterday, so I'm hurting a little bit, and I'm happy to be here though with you guys, and thank you guys for joining us. Excited to see what fights you have questions about, your lineup construction, and with my crazy day yesterday, I didn't really have time to go through and do my typical, deep lineup construction. So I did a little bit this morning, and I was kind of looking at the high priced options, and I would love to hear your take on, like, let's say, what is your order of the high priced options? We'll get to it. Or who do you think in the high priced options is maybe the safest play? I think it's a tricky card for sure. So, I'm excited to break it down with you yet again.
No, when I was doing my office hours a little earlier, that was kind of the big thing for me, was about, okay, my core today for the most part is Surreal Gane and Hani Barcelos. Those are, to me, are the two that stick out to me. But then, after that, I think it becomes to, one of the questions I got earlier this morning was, who are the cheapest fighters that you're comfortable using over on DraftKings? And, we've labeled 3 fights that you have got to sit there and prioritize today. And there are not fights you're comfortable with on either side in all reality. I mean, you look at Charles Rosa and Justin James. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to look at Justin James throwing down $25,000 on himself, that's going to go in part of their thought process. But I think that fight, to me, could go either way. I mentioned about on the strategy show, the thing that really stuck out to me about Charles Rosa was the fact, if you look on his stories, he's definitely preparing for a fighter that's going to be rushing at him. So, I just, to me, I don't really have a lot of trust in either one of those guys. Prakniow Villanueva is another one of those fights. I do find myself getting to a little bit more Ike Villanueva than I probably should be, but at that price point, 7,200, it helps you out a lot as well. And to me, the other fight that I think in terms of GPP that you got to be looking at, and maybe don't feel great on either side, is Kenny Nzechukwu and Danilo Marquez. To me, Danilo Marquez, if he's going to win this fight, he's via submission. I do like Kennedy over on FanDuel because he's going to have to stop the takedowns there. But, I mentioned this prop bet over on Thursday on the strategy show. Danilo Marquez via submission. Right now it's at plus 210, depending on what book you're looking at.
Yeah. I like those fights that you mentioned. I'm interested to see, could people be overvaluing Justin James because of that, that narrative of him betting a lot of money on himself? And I think naturally it's kind of an emotional tie to it. Like you hear that, and I mean, talk to any fighter and they're going to bet on themselves. So that this isn't really anything different. Yes, it is a drastic bet because it's $25,000, and then him going out and making it public, I think does add some added pressure. I'm interested to see if these fights that we're highlighting of the volatile matchups, whether it's between Kenny and Ngannou, the Justin James fight, like which one of these volatile matchups could possibly go overvalued and not make it into the optimal lineup. Like let's do this. You have Justin James Rosa. We have Danilo Marquez, Kenny Ngannou. And let's do the Prakniow and Villanueva fight. Of those three I mentioned, what is the most likely to not make it into the optimal? Because it's tricky.
I might say Rosa James.
See? All right. Can't you see that? So obviously Justin James' cardio is a liability for sure. We noticed that he has a significant drop off as the rounds progress. But Rosa's always in weird fights and on his back a lot. So maybe there's a potential for this to go the distance. Of those three, I would probably say that that's the one that could be like a disappointment. But I don't blame people if they want to, dumpster dive and go after Justin James because of that narrative.
Yeah, it's to me, Ngannou Marquez that is GPP written all over it.
Yeah.
Great price point, whether we're talking about DraftKings or FanDuel, 16 and 14 respectively on FanDuel, $8,200, $8,000. And then you look at Prakniow, obviously 9,000. As a 9,000 play, he's a guy he's tough to trust. I mean, we always joke about, our do not trust list. I don't know how you can trust either one of these guys in the position. I mean, look, I think that someone's getting KO'd in that matchup. To me, it's just a matter of whose chin's going to hold up the longest.
Yeah. Whenever you have a high priced fighter that is notorious for being untrustworthy, you could be looking at a leverage position where everybody's going to be targeting the other side. I do think that the odds on Prakniow being such a heavy favorite doesn't make a lot of sense given his inconsistency within the cage and his chin susceptibility. Like we've seen that where he gets cracked, wobbled. But I mean, to make it through a whole fight against Khalil Roundtree and not get finished, if your chin's really that bad, I would imagine Khalil Roundtree can check you. And he did. He caught him with a nice check hook and then like a head kick and knee. But he was able to fight through that. So overcoming adversity is a big thing. So I'm not okay with rostering Prakniow, but I feel like I need to just because of how that fight's going to go. They're both going to go forward. They're bigger guys, so they're going to be in each other's face, throwing. You got volume. You have the kicks that Prakniow can also include. So I'm interested to see how Villanueva deals with another talented striker because his last knockout win against Vinicius Bohea, he's a terrible striker. Terrible. And we saw that on display, and that's why he captured a nice knockout. But against other strikers, Chase Sherman did not look so good. Jordan Wright did not look so good. So, I mean, there's no way you trust Ike Villanueva.
No, you can't trust either one of these guys. Of course, do want to get to our super chats here in a moment, but do want to let you know our free premium data and tools over at Awesemo.com today. Our MLB player rankings, NBA player rankings, and also MMA fighter rankings. So if you're not a member of Awesemo Plus, you want to get a peek of what is behind the paywall, you got to check out that free content over there. Of course, right before us was E-Mac and Terry getting you ready for today's baseball slate. I've been starting to get into some baseball slates. Had a nice little lineup. I was winning when I went to bed. Woke up. I felt good. There was like 2 innings left in the Padres game. Felt good. Yep, woke up. Nope. Didn't win that multiplier contest. So on to the next one. And Trey Young. Oh, God. Oh, that was a little frustrating last night. When I was watching the hockey game and then I looked at my multiplier contest and I go, Trey Young only got me 22 points. Oh, that was a little.
Yeah, I mean, you recognize like when teams are able to kind of, just stifle the offense of Trey Young, that team is completely different. And obviously that's their playmaker. That's their best player. So, I'm interested to see how that series goes. Obviously they started off hot, but, defense usually wins in matchups like this. So I think that the Bucks just going to make some adjustments, but, defense is important for MMA as well. Like you have to know who's a defensive liability in striking, even on the mat, like who is susceptible to getting caught in submissions. Justin James is a guy like on the mat where we've seen, despite having all these like this wrestling background and everything, the cardio isn't there, and also like the of how he gets caught in submissions. So I don't know, that fight's interesting for me, but the Ike Villanueva Marcin Prakniow is easily the biggest GPP fight.
By the way, love the transition there, Pete. Great transition. You're learning this. You're learning this thing over here.
I got you, buddy.
You've been taking notes over here. Look, this is the thing about Justin James, and I've interviewed Justin James several times. Yes, he has a wrestling background, but he will be the first one to tell you he's not a wrestler.
Yeah, like you have all of these tools in your tool belt sometime, and don't you think like in a situation. I don't know if wrestling Charles Rosa is the best decision if you don't have good submission defense, because like Rosa is really, really tricky off of his back. We've seen what he did to Manny Bermudez, and he's always attacking legs, even your neck, triangles, arm bars, like a really, really good arm bar on the regional scene at CES. He captured some awesome submissions. So like if you're not good in submission defense, maybe going to wrestling isn't the best idea. But whenever somebody can solidify rounds, you like that. Like you're like, oh, well, he has wrestling in his back pocket. If he was ever able to implement intelligent wrestling, I think that he could actually make some waves in this division. Not like be ranked by any means, but he could be, I don't know, he could be serviceable in a division that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's just he's a guy that he just tells you, if he goes, if I'm shooting for a takedown, that means something's going wrong in this matchup. He's just not a guy. I mean, yeah, he's got a wrestling pedigree. But that's just not who he is as a fighter. Right. And we've seen that a lot with wrestlers that, yes, they have that background, but when they're able to, use that power with their hands, they're definitely going to go that route. Let's get a couple of super chats in here. First, CS checking in. He says, let's start off with the question of 2 slate breaking lower owned fighters.
What up,
So I was looking at, and me, I'm always looking, at a certain number here. And to me, I think the guys that I label as low owned potential slate breakers. And so I'm looking at who low owned could go out there and get a finish. Okay. So one of the guys that I will stick to is, I think you got to look at Daniel Pineda, because, well, when he wins by finish. He's never won a fight by decision. So I think that's someone as a leverage type play that you got to look at. I think, Herbert to me is another interesting guy because, and look, let me just, we always we give you both sides of the equation here. Okay. He has to stop the takedown. If he can't stop a takedown, Renato Moicano is going to submit him. That is my feeling on the fight. But if he can keep this on the feet, I have questions in terms of Renato Moicano's chin. We see him get knocked out in 3 of his last 4 fights.
Right.
And then the other one that I saw people bringing this up, and I'm not in this route at all. People bringing up Michel Prazeres, who massive reach disadvantage in this one. I think everyone by now has seen that stare down photo from yesterday where Rakhmonov is just towering over Michel Prazeres. And I know you talked about this on the strategy show about what Prazeres has to do when you have that amount of a reach disadvantage.
Yeah, Prazeres needs to get inside. He needs to get inside that length. And in order to do that, he needs to slip punches or duck under punches, shoot for underhooks, press him against the cage. Anytime that Rakhmonov is near the black line, he needs to press him against the cage to really wear him down and put him in his wheelhouse where he can actually have some success. Because if he stays on the outside, you would like to say that Shavkat Rakhmonov, despite having an inexperience of he's relatively inexperienced in comparison to Prazeres, 13-0 against Prazeres, 26-3. You'd think that Rakhmonov would be able to kind of outpoint him from the distance. And, the one question and concern that I have for Rakhmonov isn't a skill. It's about just experience, because if you look at his record, tons of finishes within rounds 1 and 2. How does he look in rounds 3 or when he is unable to find the finish? I understand that he's been working a lot at Sanford MMA, and when you're a part of Sanford MMA, you're going to have solid striking with Henry Hooft, but also really, really good wrestling than Greg Jones. So I think that he's going to be able to prevent Prazeres from having a lot of success. But I understand the value in a guy like Prazeres because, he can easily win a decision because he's done it. He's beaten Gilbert Burns. He's beaten tons of good fighters, but, that's by getting inside, implementing tons of takedowns, scoring 5 takedowns against Gilbert Burns, 7 against Cotrell. That's a lot. And that's a, decent amount of control time. And if you are able to take your opponent down, the height and reach does not matter as long as you're able to get them there. So, the Prazeres call is interesting for me. For me, the 2 fighters that I think could absolutely smash given like the liabilities of their opponent, Jai Herbert, number 1, as a cheap dart throw to possibly knock out Hinata Moicano. Yes, he's not too talented in the grappling realm, but I think that a win is there. And the other fighter, just based on her skill level off of her back, is Yulia Stolyarenko as like another GPP dart throw because of that armbar from guard. How often do we see it happen in women's MMA? Now you have a fighter that specializes in armbars from guard. I just think it's interesting, and I think dabbling with a couple lineups with her does make a little bit more sense than Daniel Pineda for me. But I totally agree with what you said. Like Daniel Pineda, if you're going that low, you could do worse than him because of how, the nature of his wins. When he wins, it's by finish. So that's what you want, especially at a fighter within that salary range.
Of course, a moment ago on the screen, you saw the MMA fighter rankings, which is free premium data over at Awesemo.com today. And if you like what you see and you want to become a member and you've never been a member of Awesemo Plus, we've got a great promo going on for you right now. When you use the promo code MMA Live Before Lock, that's all caps, one word, MMA Live Before Lock, you get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and that gives you access to everything over at Awesemo.com. We get you ready for today's MMA, MLB, NBA, whatever it may be. We have got you covered. So a great deal over there for new members. Get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you use that promo code MMA Live Before Lock. Of course, if you just want an MMA package, you can get a Awesemo Plus MMA weekly package for $8.95. Gives you access to ownership projections, the top fighter tool, and so much more. So check that out over Awesemo.com. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Corey, appreciate you in the super chat. He says, I know you guys like Bozer. Pete will be fighting so soon after his last fight. Affect his gas tank.
His gas tank? No. I think that Jason Floyd has better cardio than OSP. So
I don't know about that. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. That's stretched a little bit.
Is that where we draw the line? Okay. No, Tanner Bozer is going to have the cardio advantage in that fight. The one concern I have is, bouncing back so quickly if you're not completely 100%, spending some time in quarantine as well, not being able to really take your time and have a full camp against an opponent where you can specialize and strategize. But for me, I do like the Tanner Bozer skill. I think that, a guy that's been used to the division and able to outpoint and build a career off of just, outmaneuvering heavyweights, I think that he's going to have some success there against OSP.
The word you said there made me chuckle.
What?
Outpoint.
Yeah. Oh, saying, 100%.
Look, it's not good when we're talking about a heavyweight fighter that I throw out the stat that out of his last 18 fights, 14 of them have gone the distance. That's just not a stat we like hearing in DFS.
Yeah. And I do obviously OSP has skills, and his skills mainly are big left hand, good left high kick, and sneaky submissions. You got the Von Prue choke, good top position, and a big guy like that on top of you who knows what to do from a submissions standpoint is always interesting. So as an underdog, I don't hate OSP. I think a lot of the public will be targeting him in hopes that he can get it down to the mat. similar to how Alir Latifi did, and either win a decision or catch Tanner Boser in a bad spot. But for me, I like Tanner Boser a lot more than I do OSP at this stage.
Well, looking at the prop bets on that fight, the two prop bets that stick out to me: Tanner Boser via decision plus 165, OSP via submission plus 500. Of course, you can shop the odds over at oddshopper.awesemo.com, as we got it right there for you. To me, in terms of those are the prop bets in terms of that fight, I'm looking forward to. People were asking me earlier over in Slack. I just said, I was like, man, I'll have a sprinkle of this fight in GPPs, but I don't want a lot of it, just because you just expect if Tanner Boser wins, the likelihood is it's via decision. And if there's no knockdowns in the fight, it's likely not going to be a great score. OSP, I think the question is the fact that he was supposed to fight a 205-pound fight, pulls out. Now it's at heavyweight. How does that kind of work out there? Mentioned some questions over in our Slack channel. Mike Peterson saying, looking at some prop bets, what are the 3 fights that will go the distance? Well, if I was going to point out, I'd point out the fight I just mentioned. Boser and St. Preux would be one I would put there. Then I would probably look at
Dalby Tim Means for me.
Yeah, I mean, Dalby's never been finished. That's another great one. I would look at the main event, Gane and Volkov, as I think he's got a good chance to go the distance. We know female MMA, the stats typically say that those fights do tend to go the distance. I want to say it's plus 60% there. So Stolyarenko probably is something to look at, even though the prop on that actually kind of sense that maybe Vegas does think that the fight could get finished via finish. The other one I might point to is actually Feely and Pineda.
Yeah, so like if Feely wins, I think it's him outclassing Pineda. But the other fight that I think is the likelihood is it goes the distance is possibly Warley Alves against Jeremiah Wells. Wells is a guy that he's not a poorly skilled fighter at all. He actually has some skills, but stepping up. I want to see how he's going to be in the UFC, and taking on a guy in Warley Alves is always a tough task. So I think that's going to go the distance, and I think that Warley Alves will be victorious. But that's another fight that screams decision to me.
Next one from Blackburn 15 says FanDuel cash, Feely and Njeku, or Prakniow and Rosa. I'd rather go the Feely and Njeku side as opposed to Prakniow and Rosa.
So on FanDuel, Njeku makes a lot of sense because he's going to have to stuff takedowns.
That's why I was looking at that side of it.
Yeah, I would say that side for FanDuel for sure.
Yeah. CS with another super chat. I appreciate you today there, CS.
Thanks,
he goes, can you give me help, please, on the main event if entering 150 max?
All right. What's your exposure if you're doing a 150?
I'd probably, on the Volkov side, I think I'd be in the 30% range.
Okay.
35% range. Okay. And then Gane, I'm high on. I'd probably be close to 45, 50.
Okay. So you're saying about 70% of your lineups, 80% of your lineups will include the main event?
What I potentially love about Ciryl Gane today is the takedown potential. Not saying it happens, but I think he could go that route.
I think you're a little high, but I don't disagree. I don't think that he needs to go the take. He can go to the takedowns, but I also think that he doesn't want to zap his energy, because we've seen Volkov, gets taken down like crazy against Curtis Blades, but the guy's still there and present. And
I would say I prefer Volkov in cash more than I do GPPs.
I would agree with that. I think that for 150 max, I'd probably have about 60% ownership. So slightly under you. And obviously I am favoring Ciryl Gane. So I'm more of like a 40-20, I would say. I do like Ciryl Gane. I think that the salary on both fighters makes a lot of sense. Volkov typically will outstrike a lot of fighters, but we have seen time and time again over the course of his career, him get wobbled by big shots. And I think a lot of people are ignoring that. And, I've seen him get hit with big overhands, and no matter, who you are, if you get hit with a big shot, a lot of times you're going to, feel the effects of it. That's just natural, especially with it when you're within the heavyweight division. So, I I just think a guy like Gane has the tools to make this a difficult fight for Volkov, but the value's absolutely there. The salary makes sense. And that's why I'm kind of around that 60% range for the lineups. If they were cheaper, obviously my ownership would be a lot higher.
Of course, we're just under 30 minutes before lock, and today's show is sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. You have heard me and Pete talk about Monkey Knife Fight for some time here on Awesemo.com. Of course, sign up today, and Monkey Knife Fight has an instant first match deposit of up to $100 when you mention the promo code Awesemo. Be sure that promo code Awesemo to get an instant first match deposit of up to $100. There are two matchups on this card that I want to profile here. The first one is going to be Andre Fili versus Daniel Pineda. And we talked about this on the strategy show. And this is where a Monkey Knife Fight, playing Monkey Knife Fight earlier in the week in MMA, you can gain an edge. So earlier this week, the number on Daniel Pineda was much, all caps, much higher than what it was. It is at 48.5 on strikes for Daniel Pineda. Andre Fili, 62.5. I will tell you, in terms of this one, I am thinking more on both sides, but that has to be your mindset's got to be this one is staying on the feet. Andre Fili does not get the takedowns, and this thing goes 15 minutes. But yeah, there was a much better number if you want to play less on Daniel Pineda on Thursday night.
Man, I blew it. I should have targeted it. And I hope that you guys targeted it. Obviously, the adjustments we have to take into consideration. If it plays out on the feet, I don't hate the more for either fighter, but I think that Andre Fili might strike a little bit more in this matchup because of Daniel Pineda's threatening ground game. Yeah, Fili's talented in wrestling and good in jiu-jitsu as well. So I'm not saying that he's going to be afraid of Pineda's ground game. I just think that he's going to have to be a little bit more selective.
The other fight that I want to mention is a fight that we've talked a little bit about already, and that's Marcin Prakniow versus Ike Villanueva. 58.5 for Marcin Prakniow, 21.5 for Ike Villanueva. To me, the Ike side is it's an easy pick for me. I go more 21.5.
Nope.
Really?
Nope. I'm saying less. Both of these guys get knocked out by both these guys get knocked out by a gust of wind. And I don't think the fight's going to go the distance. And
and by the way, based on I pulled these numbers about an hour ago. They've gone up a little bit here. 68.5 for Marcin Prakniow, 29.5 for Ike Villanueva.
So like it's a good line if it goes the distance, but does it? That's the thing. No. I don't think it does either. And I think that you could be looking at like 62 and like 26. And then you're sitting there and you're like, my goodness.
I would lean going less on Prakniow, more on Ike Villanueva, and just praying this thing hits the second round.
I don't know, bro. I think the safe is just think both of these guys just swing and somebody drops early.
I'll tell you, this is my strategy on Monkey Knife Fight. So I have an Excel spreadsheet where I put DraftKings, FanDuel, and Monkey Knife Fight lines. And so I just kind of look at Monkey Knife Fight, and every week I just look for an advantage because there might be a fight or two that you can find has an advantage just based on how you think the fight is going to go. I had the female matchup a couple weeks ago where I was like, oh, that line is way wrong. That line's way wrong. And I cashed on that, made a sizable deposit and made sure to get my money, Of course. So that's what I try. That's what I try to do on Monkey Knife Fight. Is just find out when there are advantages that you can definitely take advantage of. Do want to get into some questions over here on YouTube, of course. So we got about 20 minutes here left in the show. Ryan checked in early saying top two dogs, GPP, DraftKings, single entry, favorite play. I think, God, I hate to say Ike Villanueva. Another one I'll throw out there.
You have to say Ike, though.
There's he's got to win. Because I think if he loses, his days in the UFC are likely over, is Yancy Medeiros.
It's a good one. Definitely a good one. Yeah, I think that his back's against the wall. I think naturally Ike Villanueva is going to be one of the best underdogs on the slate. He can come through. Yancy Medeiros is interesting, the volume, but I can't really trust his chin to this point. I'm a player where, I like to bet more on consistency instead of, just hoping that something will be different in this fight. Yes, it's been a long absence and he has some notable wins, but I don't know if he's really the same fighter that can weather a storm and take damage and keep going. So I think Ike Villanueva is just naturally one of the best underdogs on the slate. And then the value on Volkov, I still think that Gane absolutely destroys him, but I can't ignore it.
Let's see here. Next up says, you guys changed your opinion on James. Rosa did look like beast in the stare downs. I hope James doesn't get cut if he loses. James has been pretty vocal about that.
Yeah.
He feels that he loses, he's going to get a loss. And we did bring up the trend. Now, Pete told me on Thursday he's not a big believer in trends. However, if you follow a trend here with Charles Rosa,
stop it,
bro. I'm speaking facts here, bro. That's all I'm doing. He wins.
So next,
he loses.
Okay, so
wins,
so
loss,
he gets a win.
Wins, loss.
He gets a win here. Next fight, he's gonna just say, I'm gonna follow the trend and lose.
Well, the trend says he's gonna win today.
Look, I know, but you know what I mean. It works. Like if you followed the trend for Randa Marcos's career for a while, like you were actually getting good money and good odds on a lot of positions if you just followed that trend. Yeah, I mean, okay.
I think to me, this is what scares me about Charles Rosa.
Yeah,
is he's just too comfortable off his back.
Too comfortable,
and that concerns me.
I think he's an overrated striker. I think that his kicks are what kind of bails him out a lot. I don't think that his hands are as good as he thinks they are. It's his ground game and how comfortable he is with his ground game that he's able to let loose with his striking. He's not afraid of being on his back, which is kind of like, a catch-22, because if he's not doing anything, then he's losing a round. But if he's off of his back, he's able to work his game. So I'm interested to see how that fight goes for sure. Jason, we got 400 people checking us out right now. We appreciate you guys. You guys got your coffees, your breakfast, whatever you got. Thank you for joining us. If you can hit that like button, get us over 120 likes, we'd really appreciate it.
Duncan says, he goes, I'm fading Bozer OSP fight. Is that crazy? No.
It's one of the fades for me too.
Yeah. It's just, I just don't like it for GPP. It's based on the history of the fighters more than anything else. I mean, look, and maybe Tanner Bozer or OSP goes out and proves me wrong. But if you look at history, it's just tough to trust Tanner Bozer in a GPP spot, even though price point's nice, can help you with roster construction. But it's the history of, and like I mentioned a stat, 14 of his last 18 fights have gone the distance.
Yeah, you like to look at the majority of his career, right? And I don't disagree with you, but there was a time where Tanner Bozer was knocking some people out, back-to-back fights. Philippe Lins scored 106 points, first round KO. Second round KO over Rafael Pessoa, scored 87. So it's not like he doesn't have power. The intangible here could be that he's afraid of he just signed a new deal, so he's not afraid of getting released.
That don't mean anything.
Or value.
That don't mean anything, Pete. That don't mean anything.
I mean, it is a little security, but I still think that he's going to have a chip on his shoulder, right? Like he's probably going to go out there with a chip on his shoulder, try to put away OSP, because if he does that, now maybe the opinion of him changes.
He's still a younger heavyweight, but I'm telling you, there's going to come a point where they're just going to look at him and say, man, if you keep going out there getting decisions at heavyweight, they're just not going to want to be in that business.
It's not like they're paying him a lot. They need bodies for the roster.
I get that, but then it becomes a point of like, it's like, look, Lance Palmer, perfect example. He's now lost back-to-back fights. His fighting style, I don't see the UFC or Bellator interested in him.
Yeah.
And clearly the PFL wants out of that business.
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of, cost benefit. Like if they're going to pay you a lot, if you're an exciting striker, we know that, like exciting striker or exciting finisher, no matter how you are, But if you are a decisionator where you go out there and you just, find your way through 15 minutes, or you just completely grapple people like a wet blanket, then that's, you know what I mean? That's not appealing for a lot of the audience.
Yeah, it's just not. Let me see here. Mention some other top 2 Showdown captains for DraftKings. So I just pulled it up here.
Ooh.
The ones that stick out to me clearly are the 2 guys that are core for me of Gane and Hani Barcelos. Hani Barcelos, 13,200 in that captain spot. Gane, 12,600. But I think if you want to go down, maybe save some roster salary here, I think you go to these fights that we know are matchups that we feel are going to be optimal in GPP. So I think you look at that Njeku Marquis swipe.
Mm-hmm.
Njeku at 10-8 is interesting. I think that, maybe, if you want to maybe even throw a dart. I mean, look, if Daniel Pineda is going to win, he's going to win by finish. I like Feely to win the fight, but, to me, I think you look at that one. I would not feel safe in going Mancano at 15-3. I mean, he's the most expensive.
So crazy.
Look, he could very easily go out there and win by submission in the first round, but you also know that if he doesn't get to the ground, you just have concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love showdown contests. I love captain contests. I do think that MMA captain contests are extremely difficult. I am interested, and because of how busy my day was yesterday, I'll probably be playing more captain contests today than usual. But, scrolling through it right here, Moicano at 15-3, like you mentioned, is just absolutely overpriced for me. Rakhmatov still overpriced for me too, despite his finishing nature. I like what you said about Gane at 12-6. The 5 rounds makes sense. And then Njeku or Marquise 10-8 and 10-5 respectively. That's a GPP fight of this captain contest that really sticks out to me. You got to be on the correct side on that one. So I don't mind rostering that one in the captain position. It does allow you some roster flexibility.
Let's see, mention a couple of questions over from Slack. John says safest dogs for DraftKings cash.
All right, cash. Let's see. Well, if you want to be safe, right? You can go with the proven vet 33-8. Alexander Volkov 7,500. If you think that Gane is just too green at this stage of his career to be fighting a guy of Volkov's experience and caliber, I think that's going to be a very popular cash play because you're going to get points as long as he doesn't get finished early. The likelihood that does go over 2.5 rounds is pretty high. I think that's. What did you say? That's probably the best cash play as an underdog.
Say that one more time.
Wouldn't you say that's probably, Volkov's probably the best cash underdog on the slate? Yeah. I mean, yeah. Villanueva.
I think for Volkov, because you expected to go 5 rounds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's, the odds suggest that it's going to go into the later rounds. So I don't hate it. Cash is always tricky for me.
Yeah. Micah brings up a prop bet here. He says significant strikes for Renato Moicano, 35.5, more or less. I would say less.
Does a fight go the distance?
Yeah. Well, you're talking significant strikes. So that means it's got to be a fight that stays on the feet.
I think it's close, but I say less.
Of course, one of the things myself and Pete and everyone here at Awesemo loves to see after the fights are over are those screenshots of those winning lineups. You want to get yourself into the Awesemo Hall of Fame where you get profiled here on our live shows right here on YouTube. Of course, the way to do that, you got to be rocking that Awesemo avatar, your DFS profile, placed in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet those wins to @AwesemoHOF. And you'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Only 1 free month can be awarded to a user per calendar year. So congratulations to Matthew taking down 2nd place in NHL contest, and our very own Jake taking down 1st place in NHL Showdown contest, taking down 10K. Also, another one of our guys, Eric, who I've done NBA shows with, taking down contest there in NBA. Also, we had C3 Czar taking down 2nd in NBA contest. And also B Hen taking down first place in NBA. Of course, we've got you covered for NBA contests as get you ready. Of course, that's nights live before lock will be at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, strategy show took place earlier today. You can check that out right here on YouTube or a part of the Awesemo podcast network. So let's get into some more questions. Try to get as many questions we can here before we get out of here. Of course, lock here, come up here at the top of the hour as look at some other questions that have been put in there. Warley Alves, we have not brought up his name here today, and Nick bringing up, he goes, Alves is always live to massively disappoint.
Yeah, so admittedly, and you guys always know I'm transparent. If I'm off on a pick or if I'm off on a read, I admit it. And I thought that Munir Lazez was going to be able to go in there and put away Warley Alves because of the inconsistencies we've seen from Warley Alves of, the ups and downs of motivation, dedication to the sport, just mental. You don't know about his mentality. Like sometimes he wants to fight, sometimes he doesn't want to fight. So it was me more riding the recency bias of Munir Lazez, who looked incredible. But Warley Alves is a guy that's unpredictable and good striker, has been knocked out in the past, but can resort with to a strong ground game. And I think that in this matchup, he's probably going to initiate the clinch or initiate taking Jeremiah Wells down because Jeremiah Wells can crack. And when he throws heat at you, he's able to knock you out or hurt you. So Jeremiah Wells, absolute dart throw, especially on short notice against Warley Alves. But I think Warley Alves is going to be skilled enough to kind of nullify that, take him down. Not sure if he really produces at his salary range. And, this kind of, we could circle back on these 9,000 options. Moicano, 94. Avila, 93. Alves, 92. Rakhmonov, 91. Prakniow, 9,000. I mean, all of those guys are unreliable. And I think hitting the correct 9,000 option today, the one is going to be, extremely important for your lineups.
Andrew says thoughts on Tim Means as a FanDuel MVP. I think it would help separate yourself from the field, but the problem becomes is that I think you're likely going to be relying on just a massive amount of volume from Tim Means because the fact of Nicholas Dalby has never been finished.
I love the volume of Tim Means. I don't know about as your captain or whatever it's called. I don't know about that. Just because I think that you could be, leaving yourself on the outside of some big potential scorers. I think that Tim Means is a nice volume play and a guy that can go in there and get a nice win. But I'm not sure about putting him in my captain spot, so to speak.
So, last week, we got asked about Slate Breaker, and man, I hit it on there with Ricky Glenn and get a question of who is this week's Ricky Glenn?
Oh, look at you. Who is it?
Look, sometimes you nail these. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you don't. This week's Ricky Glenn. So Ricky was what, 7,400 last week? 7,300? Was he somewhere in that range?
I don't remember.
I mean, it's a quick knock. So
that was more on Joaquim Silva than Ricky Glenn, in my opinion. But
so if we're talking about quick knockout like he did, I think you got to look at Justin James because if Justin James wins, it's within the first 7.5 minutes.
Yes, you have to have exposure. I mean, this is a week like there are some times when we have cards, you feel really confident and I can uncheck people. This is a week where I wouldn't be doing a lot of unchecking and I would be looking at the dogs that can produce some crazy scores. And Justin James, he can easily replicate what he did in his debut against Frank Camacho and get a nice victory, a nice knockout over Charles Rosa, test that chin of his and just, completely just dismantle him. I wouldn't be surprised.
Here's an interesting one from Andres. Yancey and Bozer or Rosa and Wells on DraftKings.
Oh boy.
That's I would feel more comfortable going the Yancey Bozer route than I would Rosa Wells, but I'd also rather get that in cash as opposed to GPP.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah. The Smoking Pug says, do you think Marquise could submit Kennedy? That's the way he's going to win the fight.
Yeah,
I mean, plain and simple.
So that Marquez excels in grappling, and we did see Kenny Nzechukwu lose to Paul Craig, but we understand that Paul Craig's go-to is his submission ability, and he's so talented with it. You can't hate on the guy. He was always a liability to get finished, but he has a strong ground game, and if Marquise can replicate that, absolutely he can get the finish. But I think that, Kennedy's just going to be such a tall fighter to deal with in that cage that he can give Marquez a lot of problems and prevent some takedowns. So he's an excellent FanDuel play. I like Kennedy a lot today.
Of course, if you are a member of Awesemo Plus, one of the great perks of being a member is access to our premium Slack account, which, of course, you can talk with myself and Pete during the fights. Also, we do office hours. I always do those about 2 hours before Live Before Lock on Saturdays. Was in there earlier. So that's a great advantage of being a Awesemo Plus member. So be sure to check us out there in Slack during the fights today, as we'll be talking about everything going on with that. Trish says, last spot in, Yancey or James?
James. Okay, so they're both unreliable and unpredictable because you have a guy who can get wobbled a lot and knocked out in Yancy Medeiros, and you also have a cardio liability in Justin James. But I would much rather work with Justin James, who has explosive power, than a Yancy Medeiros volume type of play.
Volkov or Herbert? I would say for cash, Volkov, GPP's Herbert.
Absolutely agree.
Let's see here. Thomas brings up a point about the fight time start. Of course, these fights start at 10 a.m. Local time. I don't think it plays a difference because majority of these guys are likely training at that time anyway.
I would love to fight in the daytime. Love to fight in the daytime. You're doing morning training sessions all the time. Fighting at midnight sucks. It sucks, especially after the main event. It sucks.
Bro, I'm watching that Combate show last night, and I'm like thinking it's 1 a.m. in Florida, and these dudes are fighting.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize, you're like, what do you mean after the main event? Well, on Bellator and a lot of other promotions, they have post-limbs. They have fights after the main event. And guess who got stuck after the main event several times? This guy. And it was terrible.
Hey. You want to be a massive ticket seller? There's sometimes there's downsides to it.
Yeah, that was it, man. Telling me I'm swing bout and being prepared to fill in for a TV spot. So you start warming up at, say, let's go, 8 o'clock to be prepared, and then to that never happen, and then to be a post limb after the main event at like midnight. It was terrible.
Yeah. I told the story. I remember Steve Garcia, who's now in the UFC. He was fighting a Bellator show. I get to the venue, and one of the reasons I remember this is there was a conference call for, I want to say it was Rampage Tito when they were going to fight. And so there was like 30, 40 fans. I mean, and this is like Pete, like 3 hours before the fights are going to start.
Yeah.
And I asked one of the Bellator PR people, I go, who are these people? He goes, oh, he was the first fight of the night. He's not the first fight of the night anymore.
He sold too many tickets, because what happens is, from a business standpoint, like when I fight or anybody that sells a ton of tickets, you don't want them early on, because after the fight's over, a lot of those people don't care about the other fights. They just leave. So there goes, let's call it 25% of your crowd. You don't want that. You want the place to look packed forever. So that's why they always have the good ticket sellers towards the end of the show.
Yeah. Try to get some rapid fire in here. So we're under 4 minutes to go. Are Means and Villanueva okay for DraftKings GPP trying out MMA? Yeah, I agree with you there. More points in DraftKings GPP, Hadzovic or Rosa?
Hadzovic. I think he knocks out Medeiros here.
Charles Rosa, FanDuel MVP.
Hell no.
Yeah. By the way, small cage, something to note there in Vegas. Also, the only fight that is a 5-round fight will be the main event, which for the most case is usually the case when it comes into it. Of course, we've already talked about the Justin James betting on himself. Actually saw Cody Durden mention about how he's bet on himself before as well, and
happens
actually
all the time.
Put out his betting slips out there. Bozer by KO, but I have a little action on it. Man, it's tough to trust him going KO. Top GPP play on DraftKings. I want the first round knockout call out boys.
First round? I think, okay, to kind of like give you somebody different, I think that Hadzovic could be the guy.
Could be. Bozer or Barcelos in a DraftKings late slate non-captain. Be Barcelos for me.
I like Barcelos today.
Yeah, that's where I would go there. And I'll tell you what, I really don't play many of those captain contests in terms of MMA. It's just something I really haven't done much. I might try to do that. Try to get some other questions. Bozer means GPP. I would probably say Tim means because of volume.
Means because of the volume, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see here.
And leave salary on the table. That's how you're going to get, contrarian lineups.
I think I one lineup. I think I left at least $1,000 on the table.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
Chump change.
How Pete, this is for you. Says, how underweight are you to Volkov? Would you be across 150?
I would probably be around 28%. But that's still I think that's fair because like you can't just be so clouded and think that Gane's going to go out there and just murk him. You have to have some exposure. And I think 28%, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the way I was developing my rosters today was simply I had the core of Ciryl Gane and Honey Barcelos, and then it came down to those three fights we talked about that we know I really feel are going to be GPP optimal. Where do I want to go there? And then filling out that last spot in terms of the salary that I have left over. That was really what I was trying to do. This is. I would not say this is one of the easier slates just because of, there's not, I wouldn't say there's 4 or 5 fights that stick out to me. So we got 13 fights.
Go ahead. Set the line, buddy.
What 13 fights. I say let's stick at 5.5. What do you got? Come on.
Bro, I don't know. I'm going to say over.
Ooh.
Let us know. You think it's going over 5.5 finishes?
My initial count was I counted 5 initially. So I got Rosa James, Prakniow Villanueva.
I think there's some sneaky
Njeku
ones in here
Marquise,
too.
Moicano Herbert.
First fight of the night.
I don't know. 5.5 is a good number. 5.5 is a good number.
I'm taking the over.
I'll go under this week. I'll go a little different than you. I'll go under. We'll see. Usually I'm the over guy.
Yeah, you are.
Let me go under. We'll see how we are. Of course, no show next week as we have no MMA next weekend. So hopefully everyone has a great 4th of July. Guys. Of course, appreciate hit that thumbs up as you get out of here. Of course, keep it locked here at Awesemo all day long. 6:15, we've got MLB Live Before Lock. 8 o'clock will be NBA Live Before Lock, and then coming up in 1 hour from now, be myself and Phil for NASCAR Live Before Lock. So good luck to everyone today in your DFS lineups, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to get you ready for Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier. Already seeing there's some big contests on DK, so we will talk to you again in 2 weeks for the MMA content. Good day, everybody.
Have a good one, guys.